Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. The third time's a charm. Agnes Lam was elected lawmaker and is one of the new faces taking office this month. In her third bid to gain a seat at the local legislature, the University of Macau professor scored a comfortable win. Agnes Lam is joining us for this week's show to talk about her plans for the four-year term. Agnes Lam, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. So I'm happy, to join you here and talk about my plan.
Sure. Let's talk about the election result because this is the third time you were running. Back in 2009 and in 2013, you did not go beyond 5,300 votes, but this time you reached nearly 9,600. How did you pull it off?
Actually, I can't really tell that, because everyone's voting anonymously, so I don't know if people really vote for me. But actually, this time I planned and I planned the whole thing a lot earlier than before. So like in 2009, I only made my decision to run in May. And in 2013, more or less the same thing. I only make my decision to run in May. And so then I just have really very, short time to prepare the whole thing, like 3-4 months. And actually this time I make the decision 1 year ahead. And so, or I can say that I even make the decision, okay, I think I should run in 2013. But then slowly I talk to people and then talk about what should be the strategy. And also, I've been doing some kind of evaluation while losing the other 2 times, except from, start the whole preparation too late and then kind of understand things. And so then 1 year ahead, I basically set up my team, the working team to kind of come up with strategy and then what kind of people we should reach already. So then I think that one major progress on my side is that I start early enough to make a better planning for the campaign and also to engage people. So I think that is one of the difference I make this time.
On top of that, I might add that you managed to garner support from more groups and different social groups. For instance, this time you had the support from the New Chinese Youth Association and other social groups.
Yes.
Did that play an important role?
Yeah, of course, that played an important role, and actually that was part of my plan. So the time when I kind of decided, so my base organization, Civil Power, and so we have some kind of retreat in the last summer, and then we kind of talk about that, and so we were kind of thinking that actually all my votes, people call it as consensus vote, and so they just vote for me. They're not my member. I don't really have their number, and so I think I engage people more or less through social media, Facebook, or maybe just some strangers, and maybe they saw me in TDM Talk. So it would be something like that. And so my organization was not very strong, and so I was trying to think that maybe this time I should identify all those kind of smaller unions, organizations that are not actively participate in the election. So maybe I try to engage those people and talk to them. And so, and also I kind of, when I was thinking something like that, I also try to identify some other, social issues, some other areas that we don't really have people that are working on it, like the medical one. Even that we have some legislators from that field, but they are not very, I think, they did not actively, discuss or bring up those issues to the assembly. So I was thinking that, okay, one thing is that I try to identify people and organizations that I think I can motivate them, and then at that time they will not actively participate. And the other side is that I was kind of looking at different issues I think that would be important for Macau, but at the same time we did not have, strong enough voice in the assembly. So this would be the two, I don't know, maybe the two ways I was kind of walking through and talk to people. Yeah.
You were talking about medical professionals, and if we look at your ticket, we can see that your number 2, Cheung Chi-hong, is a doctor, as well as Wu Xiaocheng, right? And actually, talking about Cheung Chi-hong, is one of the vice presidents of the New Chinese Youth Association of Macau. So can we assume that these two, your number 2 and number 3, did also play an important role in getting more support and expanding your base?
Yeah, actually they did. So why I start to kind of look at the medical issue. Medical issue was kind of in my platform from the very beginning in 2009, 2013. But then actually last year we kind of noticed that there was a lot of debate in within the medical organizations in Macau about the malpractice, medical malpractice law. And so then at that time I heard a lot of voices, and then they have a lot of concern about the law. But then I found that all those voices were not really reported on the media, and so and even in the assembly. And so I found it kind of surprised. So I start to talk to people. So my second and third candidate, they were my friends, doctor, and then I have some other doctor friends that they're doctor. So we did have quite some conversation about the law and what should be the issue that we need to look at it. And so I spent some months to understand what would be the issue. Then I started to think, oh, maybe I need to put medical as one of my major platforms this time. And also I want to have some doctors in my team. And so, and to be honest, and then I talked to several people and hope that they can, join me as a candidate, because I cannot say that I'm going to do, I'm going to voice for the medical issue if I'm not a doctor. I just don't have that legitimacy. So I think that if I can have some doctors or even nurses in my team, that would be great. And so then I start to talk to them and to try to gain support. And so eventually both of them, they said, okay, we're ready. And then but then at the same time, because they focus on different issues. So Dr. Ng, he focused more on the professional growth and the professional accreditation system in Macau. And so Dr. Zheng, and he focused on more like what we call is the community medical system. So he focused, so they've been focusing on different issues and trying to promote different issues in their own association or area of service already. So I think that, but we need both for the whole Macau, so maybe I bring them together, yeah.
And this leads me to the issue, let's talk about priorities.
Yes.
Because it makes sense to talk about health policies.
Yeah.
Medical malpractice, you've already said this is one of your top issues.
Yes.
Why is that, and what else would you prioritize in terms of health policies?
Yeah, why is that? Is that because, like, I think in Macau we always, heard people talk about, their own story, sad story about what they encounter in the hospital system, and then so we heard a lot of story. And also why I start to really look at it is that I help kind of young baby girl a few years in 2003 actually. So then she was kind of told, her parents were told that she would be blind forever. And so, actually the father of this baby girl is my fifth candidate. And so they came to my campaign activity in 2013 and told me the story. So, and at that time I had one candidate, and Mr. Zheng Zibong, Albert Zheng, and so he's the president of the Visually Impaired Association. And actually he told me that maybe we should kind of look at how can we help the visually impaired group, how can we help them? So then I kind of run into them and they told me the story, and then I thought, okay, so part of that case, the baby girl's case, is that it was telling that we need to have more resources for the blind or visually impaired people, but at the same time we found that it seems that the medical system here in Macau had a systematic problem, because when the baby girl, were kind of not diagnosed as a blind forever. And then we learned that in US or even in Hong Kong, actually they have a surgery to help. And so then, but the hospital at that time, they basically reject to send the baby girl, and then they just said, okay, we don't think that that's possible to cure, that disease. But eventually, they reject that we raise money for the baby girl. We raised 1.6 million. And then we sent the baby girl to US, and so her the disease was cured, and now she could see. But she has some other problems now, like she cannot speak yet because I think the surgery happened too late. And then, but anyway, I think we can help. So since that case, actually, I work closely with people that help the minority, visually impaired group, and also there was another organization, a small one, but then they help to promote patients' rights in Macau. So actually, since in the past 4 years, I start to work with people that advocate for patients' rights, for visually impaired people. Then gradually I start to understand that maybe we should also look at the medical system as well, because they are part of the problem. Or if they do better, they can be in a role that can actively help people to cure their disease, and then the whole society would just be better. So I think it took me like 4 years to kind of link all these cases and people together. And so I think that's one of, I could just say that one of the good thing or the wise thing, the good strategy I have this time is to bring all those people together.
You're talking about the way these individual cases, these human interest cases, raise your awareness on these problems. Let's look at this in a more systematic way, talking about public health policies. So the government is often criticizing for, to some extent, turning a blind eye on a sound and solid public health system. Issues such as shortage of specialist doctors, in terms of infrastructure, the long delayed public hospital in the islands, and other matters. What's your assessment in this respect, and what can be done to turn things around?
To be honest, like if we really need to list out everything, I kind of list out like more or less like 50, basic policy we need to have. But then eventually we kind of simplify in like 5 lines in my platform. So from the kind of really long term, or kind of middle from long term, we need to have a new insurance system. And so then, because the money that we spend in Macau, we are now spend like 7 billion, money in the medical every year. And so it's more or less if you add like 2 or 3 more billion, then you can cover everyone's insurance to see a doctor in Macau, Hong Kong, everywhere in the world, basically. You know what I mean? We are spending an outrageous amount of money. But at the same time, there's a lot of systematic error, I could say, in Macau. Like, for example, in Macau, if you're working in the hospital, then you can claim that you are like a cardiology or you are a specialty in some area. But if you leave the hospital system, you cannot claim that anymore. So they don't allow an individual doctor that opened his own clinic to claim that his specialty is in any area. So what would happen? You are not helping the doctor to grow or to kind of train themselves or to just to take some more exam and to better their own skill. You're not requiring that. Once people leave this hospital system, they don't have the professional accreditation, and that's totally wrong. And so, but if you just compare to Hong Kong, is that the hospital, especially the public hospital, they pay some kind of role that they would take the medical student, okay, or they come in, and then they did some kind of test and internship, and after that, and then they need to take a very good take some kind of exam. And so if they are good enough, they can stay. Okay, if they don't, then they go somewhere else. If they go somewhere else, okay, so what we call the private doctors in Hong Kong, there are 2 types. One, they are very, very good, and so they work in the public hospital, become very famous, and then they left the public hospital position and open their own clinic, and then they work with the private hospital, and that's those doctors that a lot of people from Macau, the rich people in Macau, they're seeing those doctors, right? And so they're famous, and then public, and then they can train their own people, in another system. And some other, private doctor, they may fail in the exam to stay in the public public hospital. At the same time, they can still try to get some other certificate. They can have some other way. They go to UK, or even some university in Hong Kong. They just keep trying, and eventually they can still become a doctor, doctor with proper, professional accreditation with all those certificates that later they try to get. So in Hong Kong, they have a system that you can bring the public and the private sector together. And so then, if you think that it takes you to wait too long in the public hospital, you can go to the private one. Of course, the private one is very expensive, but then a lot of people, okay, their maybe this company's insurance or their personal insurance that cover, the expenses. So you have a better one. So the Hong Kong is not the best, actually. I think the Taiwan model would be the better one. But then I'm just telling you that that's how other people's system work. But here in Macau, you find that if someone cannot enter the hospital, they are going to be a doctor with no specialist forever. So they can just diagnose people's cough, something very similar, and then they basically fail their whole life. They just cannot grow up, and they cannot become something. But then if you want to work in the public hospital, they don't have enough position, and also they stop taking anyone since late 1990s for like 17 years. And so then we have 17 years in the past, okay, all those medical school graduates, and then when they come back to Macau, they have no way to go. They cannot enter the hospital system, and then they need to open their clinic, but then they're not famous, and then they still don't have their own clients yet. There was no way for them to grow. And if they want to become something, there was no mechanism for them to become a professional in any kind. So they cannot become a cardiology, even then originally the person majored in that one, you know what I mean? And so the whole system is kind of failed. We cannot promote talents, or we cannot train talents, and so I think that in the long term we need to do this as well. So that's one thing we say, that we need to start have the professional accreditation system. But in order to do that, we have a lot of short-term things we need to do. Okay, so for example, one thing that the director for the health department should not be the director of Shandong Yiyuan. It's wrong.
Of the
it's
public
wrong.
hospital.
Yeah, it's wrong. So the health department's director should be kind of in some kind of position that overseeing all the hospital in Macau, all the health system in Macau. Because now what happens if people complain to the hospital, right, the government hospital, and then the director or the president of the health department will come and say, no, we didn't do anything wrong, but no, you should be the one to investigate what's going on there, you know what I mean? And so then I think that the whole system is not reasonable now. We don't have the proper balance of power, or kind of I cannot balance check, system. We just don't have that.
Checks and balances.
Yeah, checks and balances, yeah.
You were talking about the health policies, and now we would move to the health of the local, of the SAR's political system. Because, well, analysts are saying that to some extent you are a sort of novelty in Macau's political spectrum in the Legislative Assembly. And right after the election, some journalists and some observers were kind of struggling to place you. Are you pro-establishment, or are you from the pro-democracy camp? Taking into account your background, the fact that you have the support of this pro-Beijing group, which is the New Chinese Youth Association, but at the same time you also talk about universal suffrage.
Yes.
Where do you fit?
Yeah, actually, I think I understand why it's hard for people to fit me, because I think in the past decades, Macau, actually we are affected by Hong Kong a lot, right? When we're talking, using all those political terms. So we are kind of polarized a lot, and so people can only understand, or they can only imagine that there should be only two camps: one pro-establishment, the other one is pro-democracy, or one is anti-government, the other is pro-government, would be something like that. But actually, I think that back in those times when I was a journalist, I already think that that's not right. And then we should not just have people there from these two camps, because a lot of time they were spending time to debate on nothing. What's debate on nothing? Debate on, are you supporting the government? Are you going to support the central government or anything? And actually, when the true issue coming out, and then nobody really kind of look into the law. And that's why we have a lot of problems in the assembly, that they approve some law and then later they find, we have some mistake, and then so we didn't pay attention to this, and so we need to withdraw the proposal. We need to kind of revise the law. So I always think that there should be some kind of force or power, or some kind of people, okay, then kind of really focus on the issue. So to me, okay, I would kind of say that I need, when I'm running the election, this is the direct vote, right? I need to gain votes from people. So I cannot just differentiate that, okay, it seems that you support democracy, so you are my vote, and then it seems you're not, so you don't vote for me. I cannot do that. I just need to tell everyone that, okay, this is what I believe. No matter your background would be, I hope you can support me.
Would you consider yourself as middle of the road in the kind of polarized
yeah.
spectrum?
Actually, so that's why later I kind of, it took me some while to kind of, when I relate to people, and then so I'm not this, I'm not that, so I'm more or less in the middle. And so, but when I'm talking about I'm kind of in the middle of role, people might be prepared that sometimes I might be even, I might going farther than, than the left on some issue. Sometimes I might go further like that, because I don't really, I am not standing here to say that I want to support the government or not. I'm not doing that. I'm going to look at the issue, and in some cases, I guess, if I can be some kind of balance of the power, try
between
to
the different camps.
I would try to be that one.
But then, would you, generally speaking, would you feel or sense that you are closer? Are you closer to people like Nkwok Chungwan Ao Kam San, or even Sulusu, or to those lawmakers from the so-called pro-Beijing traditional camp, like the Federation of Trade Unions lawmakers and the Kaifong, the neighborhood association lawmakers?
So I think if you're talking about the political spectrum, right? So if you're looking like this end and that end, so I think I'm more or less like, it's true that I'm more or less in the middle, because I'm, on one hand, I think I'm closer to people like Ngok Chang and not so more or less like Ngok Chang. On the other side, I think I'm closer to the Lei Zhengyi and more than other people, you know what I mean? And so that's what I understand.
That depends on the issue, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, it depends on the issue. Like for the universal suffrage, so I support the chief executive election should have the direct vote, right?
That's an interesting point. You have been standing for one man, one vote when it comes to electing the chief executive.
Yes.
Would that be a sort of a package similar to the one that was offered to Hong Kong but was turned down?
Yeah. Actually,
that would be suitable for Macau?
Yeah. Actually, I support to that package, because I think that that's at this moment what I could understand that would be the best deal already. Yeah. So I support to that.
But is it
package.
possible to have it in place for the 2019 chief executive election, which is
No.
2 years ago?
No. I think the latest that would happen, the nearest future would be 2024. So actually we revise our platform this time, and then we put it as 2024, and then we should kind of to be more realistic. We fight for that one, and not the 2017 one.
But you did say that you would welcome competition even for the 2019, even if it's without universal suffrage. You'd like to see competition, not only one candidate.
Of course, I think that if we are going to have universal suffrage in the long term, and then people need to start to be used to some kind of competition. I think now the problem is that even for the chief executive candidate, especially for the current financial chair, okay, so the 2 times he ran, there was no other people. And so he doesn't really need to, go through any kind of competition. Even the competition might be very, not a true competition.
Not a true competition.
But there's still some competition. I think that would be very good for the chief. It's part of the training, actually. It's part of the training. And then, so our chief executive need to be trained in some way for them to try to understand how to relate to people on the street. And then if he or she can do that, and it would be, I think it would be just, it would benefit them, when they're running their office. And then they need to understand that, why suddenly people are so unhappy, and then so what kind of those emotion coming from. I think that unless you go through a certain democratic process, you won't understand that. So I think that they need that. Yeah.
Talking about roadmap, if we look at the Legislative Assembly, what's your take on the way ahead to democratize, to have more directly elected?
Yeah, actually I agree that we should have more direct elected seats. So the first step, we should have, over half of the seats that should be direct elected. So like if in the Sudan now we have 34, right? And so we have only 14. And so until we have like 17 or 18. So then we need 4 more. Okay, 4 more. If we can reduce
at the expense of the appointed ones, like
I think that maybe reduce 2 from the indirect one, okay, and then we reduce 2 from the appointed membership, and then we will have like more direct seats already, and so that would be a better plan than it is now. So
but the ultimate goal should be having the whole chamber directly elected.
Actually, I think that we should, because the whole chamber, the first time when I run the election in 2009, I think that should be the goal.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I remember. So I think that's, but then later now I understand that if we need to have that in
you
place.
need to amend the basic law.
Yeah,
Is
we
that
need
correct?
we need to amend the basic law. And now I understand, judging from the Hong Kong experience, I understand that it's very, very hard. And also we might run into some kind of risk that if once you propose to revise or amend the basic law, and then some other people might also voice to amend the basic law in some other way, you know what I mean? And so then I think that to take a more kind of approach, more moderate approach, so that we can still keep some seats. The minimal seat would be 1, right? And then I think we should always appoint a Macau Portuguese to be appointed.
To be faithful to what's spelled out in the basic law.
Yeah, actually, I think that what I understand is that I talked to a lot of people that at the time when they were in those kind of meetings, you know, when they were drafting the basic law. And I think one of the reasons at that time that people all agree that we should have the appointed membership was the reason that we need to make sure the Macau or Portuguese, they are properly represented in the assembly.
But
now they are not.
Chief Executive Tristan did not appoint any Portuguese Macau.
That's something I criticized already. And then they should have someone. And especially this time, we don't even have a mechanism in the indirect election. So because before we always have like Lionel Alversion, and he's always there. You can always make him be
even
that
before
person.
you had appointed lawmakers such as José Manuel Rodrigues.
Yeah. And then we should have one. And then because I think that they should be in the assembly, because then it's not just for the ethnic group, you know, but at the same time, I think that they also understand a lot about the Macau culture and history. And so whenever we are kind of revising our law, we're doing legislation, and then we just need to have their voice there. And then we can make them kind of the guard to keep some of the, you know, the Portuguese legacy here. So I think we should have a appointed membership. And so in the future, if the government agree that for the appointed membership, the chief executive can only appoint certain members, you know, or members from certain group, like the ethnic group or Portuguese and Macanese, and then maybe the minorities.
Now you're talking about minorities, and because many of our viewers are from migrant workers communities, and there's this view that in terms of healthcare, social welfare, they are left out in the dark in many ways. Even labor rights because of the system that we have here. So what's your take? I mean, would you think it's important to strengthen their rights and having them to have a better situation when it comes to healthcare, to social welfare, and how could that be done? Are you going to talk about that?
Yeah. Actually, I think we put a very not a lot, but maybe one sentence on our platform. It's like that if Macau want to become a true, you know, better place, okay, of course we need to work for the locals, but at the same time, all those kind of incoming workers, okay, their basic human rights should be protected, and so and from that.
Would you say that it's not the case now?
It's the case now. I think that we can always kind of reviewing the law, and so I think that they are kind of left out in, for example, like the what is it called, for the health policy. I don't think that they're enjoying any benefit now, right? And so then I think that maybe we need to look at that. Like I heard about several cases, like if migrant workers work in the big casino. Okay, there was one case I heard about, and so she fell down. A woman fell down from the stairs somewhere. and then she was hospitalized. But then she was appointed, hired not by the casino itself, but hired by a kind of cleaning company. And the company was basically blackmailing her, okay, you don't report to anyone, you pay the bill, or you settle the bill, or else you will lose your job. So for that kind of case, okay, there should be some mechanism to help the women, because that the bill was a huge amount, you know, comparing to her salary. She's earning like 4,000 per month, and then she needs to pay like more or less like 10,000 in the hospital. And this company claimed that it's a small company, and then we cannot afford this, telling people, and then you don't tell. But like this kind of case, who's going to help the women? Okay, there should be some kind of mechanism. So I think that, yeah, in the future, and then we need to work on that. And this helping or protecting this kind of income workers doesn't hurt any locals. You know what I mean? It doesn't hurt any it doesn't hurt any locals. Yeah.
But allow me to jump in here. But let's say, for instance, one of the controversies of the week has been the proposal to have different bus tariffs when using Macau Pass for those who hold a Macau ID card, those who are residents, and those who are non-residents, blue card holders.
Yes.
This has stirred up a huge debate. What's your take on
Actually,
this?
I think that I kind of agree that we need to have a different tariff for tourists and people that's in Macau. So for tourists, I'm not talking about migrant workers. I'm talking about tourists. And so then they can more, because they're working here, so they can more or less enjoy the same thing. But what the problem now is that plan is not clear how the government is subsidizing everybody. You know what I mean? So do you understand how much you pay now, and then how much the government is paying on every, right? You don't know. We never have that kind of statistics. And then so I can't, actually I was interviewed by a local Chinese newspaper, and I said, okay, the government should present us the statistics, and then how does this work now? And then if they cannot tell us how does it work now, we cannot really tell what should be the true scheme, you know what I mean? And so then if we know that, okay, for every individual, because like if we go to London, the true international city, we go to London, we pay the same fare as the locals, right? And then, but if the locals, they need to enjoy some kind of privilege, okay, or some kind of subsidies for the transportation, those money can go to the person's account. So the elderly, they don't need to buy an elderly bus ticket. Okay, they buy the same kind of bus ticket as everyone does. But then at the same time, they can receive some money from their bank account. We can do that. So if you want to subsidize the locals, you can subsidize to their own pocket. You don't need to make that, this a type A, type B, type 3. They make it so difficult. And I just don't understand, yeah.
One final question. We, of course, we don't have time to go through all the topics, but I'd like you to briefly address issues related to women's rights. You were touching upon that a while ago. We have this discussion on the revision amendment to the Labor Relations Act, specifically when it comes to maternity and paternity leave. So on the table, we have a proposal according to which maternity leave would be extended from 56 to 14 days, but the extra 14 days would not be paid. What's your comment on this?
Actually, I think that in my platform, we want to fight for the 90 days. It's not only
for everybody,
for
right?
Everyone,
regardless
for everyone.
of whether you are a civil servant or
and the 90 days should be kind of so all the mothers, okay, if all the humans are equal, all the mothers should be equal, all the babies equal. Okay, so then that should be the one thing. But then for those kind of small business sector companies, if they claim that they cannot afford the money to do that, and so then we can have some kind of like what happened in Canada. Okay, so Canada is one of the countries that implement this 90 days. Actually, they have more than that. The longest time is like maybe 180, and so the government can pay for that. They can subsidize the company to hire someone, and so I think we should start to do that. And so there should be some other way to really help the small business, and so we don't need to tell people because you are working in the small business, and then your motherhood worth less. We should not let that happen. Yeah.
One final question, a bit coming back to the beginning of our talk. The first piece of legislation that I'm sure you are already preparing, that you are planning to put forward for your peers, to your colleagues, the Legislative Assembly, to have a say. What are you planning? What would be your first?
So to be honest, originally we prepared something about the medical malpractice law already. But now I'm planning and actually we designed already, we're going to put forward another bill regarding to the housing safety or building safety, the safety measurement of the buildings already. And so that I think that would be more urgent because of the Typhoon Hato case. Yeah. And so then we now revise the order. But both of them, I hope that I could have the chance or room or opportunity to present them within this year.
And looking for support from your colleagues from the other.
Yeah. Actually, we have people that are kind of my colleagues from both from civil file and all my candidates. We're kind of working on it already. Yeah.
Would you expect the government to kind of endorse? Because one of the issues regards the relations between the Legislative Assembly and the government, the legislative and the executive branches. It is what we've been told a number of times, especially by government think tanks, that this is an executive-led system. And but what's the role of the Legislative Assembly and of the legislators in terms of initiating the whole process?
I think we can always kind of initiating, and the government cannot always reject. I just think that they just cannot do it. And so if they reject, they need to give a reason. If they prepare something that's better than my bill, it's okay. So, but one of my strategy or my aim would be, okay, now we prepare something here, and then I hope you would endorse it. And of course, I will try to talk because I'm not on the, I'm not sitting on the seat yet, so I'm not sure if I can do, certain things now. And so there's nobody contacting me and telling me, okay, how can you put forward a thing? I think that might happen only when the new year, the new term begins. So, and I will try to understand how can I do it. And now what I understand is that I can always present, if I want to push the agenda first, and then I can always do something. Yeah.
Agnes Lam, thank you very much for joining us. Okay. That's a lot of food for thought and plenty of issues to address. Thank you very much, and perhaps sometime next year we can have another show to talk about the bills that you have introduced and all the reaction. Thank you for joining us. And to you at home, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.